All right. And we talked yesterday about what is it that makes an animal permissible to eat? That it has split hooves and that it chews its cud. And the Rebbe brought up that there's differing opinions if this makes the animal kosher or if it's just a sign that the animal is kosher. And he brings different sides to it. Okay, so the Rebbe says, this is also a sign about us, how we can be kosher, the animal in us. The animal in us. How we can make that. Now we're not talking about when a Jew learns Torah, when he does the commandments, when he's doing all these holy things. Your own personal personality, who you are. Your animal. How you interact with the world, how you interact with people. The animal which is in the heart of each one of us. How can we take this message of the Torah to heart? And purify and know if our animal, our natural personality, is kosher or not. If the havchana, that how can we discern when birur, and how can we fix zayin nitbenogea the inyanim? We're not talking about excuse me. I move this thing, I lose. Anyway, this is regarding to the animal. Dugmas zebara, like a person. Whether the heart of the person, this is his animal soul. Here, this is his. The able to discern and to refine is not regarding your godly soul doing Torah and the commandments, which it could be you're really a genuine Jew and you're doing the Torah for the sake of God. It could be that you're doing the Torah and the commandments for ulterior motives, right? Like we said, you want security, you want a position, you want to go to heaven, whatever. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about this, the animal soul. The Havchana is nogea the inyan gashmi. We're talking about physical things in the world, the chazayin and verbunda, which are connected to what's called the animal, the natural soul. Darfman mavchin zayin. You have to discern, see the behema, if your animal is a permissible animal or not. How you deal in the world. This, of course, is relevant to everyone, Jew and non-Jew. Beta behemoth. Staying in the Torah. Both types of animal, kosher animal and not kosher animal, are both in the Torah. Here we have it's in this week's Torah portion. Also the impure animals. This means as a filu, fear and dik, zich, Torah, even when a person is a religious Jew and he does according to the Torah, and he has a mezuzah on his door and he keeps Shabbos, but it can mean it could be that he is an impure, a forbidden animal. How can that be? The Rambam, like the Rambam says, as men can sign a novel Rishus Torah. This is Parshas Kedoshim. It's possible that a person can be a nevil? A nevil is a disgusting person. There must be a really good word for it. They have to have not a dirty word. Okay. Anyway, a foul person, according to the Torah, does haste as his duchtim, that it's duchtim ois, that he can really fool himself, and he really thinks as does is Bereshus Torah, that what he's doing, he loses his temper, he eats like a pig. He doesn't eat pig, he eats kosher food, but how he eats and what he does with his money, and he's stingy, is this, is that, he thinks that whatever he has an excuse for everything. Over Sivoy, but really the fact is he's transgressing the commandment from Kadoshim to you. You have to be holy in everything you do. Tzivoy Ikari B'Shorshi, which is a very root and very important basic commandment in Judaism, that you have to be holy in everything you do. In your business, in your private life, what you do when you're in your house, behind closed doors. Is oif zu mavchin zayin, vos is a behema Torah. In order to know how to be a permissible animal, the Torah tells us two things. Look at yourself. We're not talking about judging other people. You can only judge yourself. Exactly the opposite. Other people, you have absolutely no idea what's going on underneath them. It could be the person doesn't do Torah and commandments, and nevertheless, his, how do you say, personality is refined. And there can be a person exactly the opposite. He does the Torah and the commandments. Some people, because they do Torah and the commandments, so this is an excuse that they can act like animals. They can be selfish, they can be rude, insensitive, cruel, but it's all according to the Torah. You want to find out, you want to look at your animal and fix yourself up. So look for these two signs. You have to have split hooves, and you have to chew your cud. The Rebbe is going to spend a lot of time on the split hooves now. Let's go. Bichlal is oich by a behema. By an animal, there is a big difference between the head and the feet. And we verstanden, like it's understood, according to the laws of trephus and etc. Right, an animal that has a broken foot, something like that, it's kosher until it gets up to the knee. Above the knee, it starts getting not kosher. But on the head, if it's broken, you got problems. Is oyster them afilu by a behema zainen nunt to their earth nor the feet. The lowest part of the animal is not the knees or it's the leg, it's the foot. Thus says this means as mit the kochos nalim, which with their higher powers of a person, intellect, emotions, etc. We're talking about the animal soul of a person, but the metaphor is to a regular animal. By an animal is oich from nefesh bahamis, darf men nit legen in gashmius. The upper part of the human being should not be too close to the ground. Only the feet, just like an animal. Even an animal, its head is above the ground, its heart is above the ground. Only the feet are above the ground. And yet, artsim, physical things, nor mit the kochos from maisa vifil muzman. How much you have to? Right? You buy a car, you buy a house, you buy clothes. They should be nice, should be okay. But don't let your car rule over you, your house rule over you. You go crazy. There's a little mark on your car. Somebody bumps into it, you go berserk, right? Your house, the sprinkler doesn't work or something. You're angry, you get mad. That's what's going on. You're depressed the whole day because it's going to ruin the grass or something like that. Okay, it's good. You should have grass, you should have sprinklers, but it shouldn't make you crazy. Only your feet, like an animal, only your feet should be involved in the physical, not your head and your heart. Men der Tzelt, as the Rebbe, there was, like, for instance, there was a story by the Rebbe Rishab, the fifth Rebbe of Chabad, had gesagt, he said to a chassid, to one of his chassidim, one of his followers, welcher is given at Tziur un abal kishronos, that he was he acted properly and he had talents and he learned Torah and etc. And he was a nice person, but he had reingetan in mischar from clutches, that he had a business selling boots, shoes. And he said to him, Fis in clutches, I saw people that put their feet in shoes. Of a cup in clutches, but a person that puts his whole head and his whole heart into the shoes, I never saw. Right? The person was taking his business too seriously. Right? There's people that they think about their business all the time. There's people on Shabbat, they go to the shul and they see somebody else. Oh, I remember I had a deal I wanted to ask this question about where's the best place to buy shoes. Can you buy over here? Wonderful to talk about these things, right? But on Shabbat, in the middle of Sadam, if you want to talk about it after you finish praying, take the person outside and talk about it or something. But it's such an important thing. So he says, a Jew is supposed to have his head and his heart are supposed to be in doing what God wants, not in how much money I make. Making money is a very important thing. That's where your feet should be. The lower part of you should be in making money, right? To be honest. Oh, that you should have your head. Your heart should be in being honest, right? Instead of making a $1 million deal to make a $10 million deal, that shouldn't be where your head is at. That shouldn't be where you're. It's something you do, right? That's your worship. Your head, you're supposed to be thanking God, learning Torah, doing the commandments. Don't put your head into your business. The feet have to be in the business. Oisedem also darf sein and regel, but not only is your foot touching the ground, but also on the foot itself, between your foot and the ground, there is a hoof, a hefsek, a filut zwischen raglayim and ardishkeit. If you look at the structure of animal's foot, especially a kosher animal that has hooves, animals that have hooves, or even animals that that aren't kosher, like a horse that has hooves. So really, the structure of the animal's foot, it has joints on it, just like a human hand or a human foot does. Foot, but it's like a human being that stands on his toes. Stands on his toes, and the toenail, instead of being on the top, right, it is between the hoof is like the toenail. Hoof is like so it ends up that an animal is also standing really on the tips of his foot, on the tips of his foot, and between the tip of his foot and the ground is the toenail, which is the hoof. That's what the hoof is. Says the Rebbe, the parsa is inyan, which we said before, is a parsa, a separation, a hefsek, a concealment, and a separation. Darf ober sein, right? That's what separates the person from the ground. Has to be a zuspalten. It has to be divided. That says, what does it mean? As oich in dem inyan artzim, that even in the physical, mundane things that a person is occupied, soll lichten get lechet, they should shine godliness. And it's not that your business is one thing and your Jewish life is another thing. There was the big enemies of Judaism, right? The big enemies of Judaism. This was this Mendelssohn guy, all these other people. They said you have to be a Jew at home and a man in the street. Yehudi bebeitecha va'adam b'tzeitecha. And there's two separate people. One is the holy person, and the other one is the mundane person. Well, the Rebbe is saying that there's a point to that. It's true that your Jewish connection to God has to be not affected by the world. True. So there has to be a separation. But your Jewish connection to God has to, yes, affect the world. The hoof, which separates you from the world, it has to be split so that godliness can come down. It has to be open to the heavens. El zan inzain elokus, that your mundane things, the hoof that separates you from your physical things, from the ground, it has to be split. It has to allow godliness from what's above to come in. Vs wird declared, like it said in Chassidus be'inyan hasa'arot. Okay, this is a little bit complicated, but I think you can get it. Hairs. There's a law in Judaism that women and the Levites also are not supposed to have long hair. Oh. As by an isha, by a woman, and also, like it says, sar isha irva, it says the hair of a married woman is considered to be like nakedness. She has to cover over her hair. Even a woman that was once married, she has to. By the Levim, also by the Levites, is v'haviru ta'ar, The Levites also had to remove all the hair from their head and their body. Or by a Nazir, but a Nazir is a person that declares himself to be holy and removes himself from wine. It's a special level of holiness. It says that he has to have long hair. Why does he have to have long hair? Because there's a lot of holiness. When there's holiness, so there can't be too much. It has to come out in a way of hairs. Reddit sich der Bier, why the Levites and the women have to cut their hair. We'll talk, that's not for now. But nevertheless, the whole thing of a Nazir is declared, revealed holiness. And to have too much of it is not good, but there has to be some. There has to be a revelation. Reddit sich der Bier, it explains, as when der chayus, when the light and life force of God is very small, like it is with women or with the Levites, as darv seinen saros, dart seinen saros, they have to be a chisron. Then hairs are not a good thing. Too much contraction is not good, because hairs represent contraction of life. Moshiach, which is not the case when the life force is a big life force like a Nazir. As darv sign sorrows, there has to be hairs, there has to be a revelation. Therefore, is by a Nazir Kodesh, with the Nazir is called Kodesh Yeh. It says Gadol Pera Saro Rosho. It says that it has to grow the hairs of his head. Kenu being in a parsa, so it is also in the hoof of the animal. That the parsa, because what does it do? It separates from the person, that's holiness, and the ground. So it has to be divided. It has to allow holiness to come through. Just like the hairs of the Nazir allow the holiness of the Nazir to come out. Und wie gesagt, like we said in the Tanya, shegam b'inyan eretz, that also in matters, physical things, when a person is in the world, lo yivtu me'echad emes, you should not be separated from God's oneness. As oich in the inyanim from Welt, even when a person is in the world, zal men sich nit abschiden, you should not separate yourself from God. Echad emes, some people when they get into business, they think in order to make money, in order to save the business or whatever, so they have to forget about God. You have to open up on Shabbos, you have to cheat a little bit, right? You have to cheat the customer a little bit, you have to, right, sell the inferior products at a higher price. Und therefore, darf sein Zugespaltigkeit sein, a person has to be, so to speak, opened up, like divided, durch and durch, all the way through, so that the holiness that you have in the daytime comes in, and when you're praying and when you're learning, when you're doing holy things, it should come into the physical world. It's this ankommen, gor unten, it should come to the lowest levels. It used to be the Jewish businessmen or whatever, that whenever they had a free moment, they would open up a book of Tehillim, or they would say a psalm. For sure, they would take a break in the middle of the day to pray mincha. Sometimes there's some people, also businessmen, that they take a break in the middle of the day and they pray mincha, and they have a 15-minute Torah class. Was demo, which then davka can min machen, you can make from an animal a pure animal, a permissible animal. It has to be hooves, but they have to be split. Thus says this means a zayin behema, that your animal, your physicality, was is muchrach mitzad guf, the physical things which you have to have because of a body, or your body. You have to have food, you have to have a house, you have to have a wife, you have to have children, you have to have a car, right? These are things that you have to have clothes. In order to have these things, you have to have money. These physical things that you need, zol zayin behema tahora. You should be an animal. You have to be a pure animal. What's a pure animal? It's split. Godliness comes into everything that he does. He always has a word to say about God, a word to say about trust, something positive. Und via steht, like it says in the book Kehelis Yaakov, from the Bala Machaber Sefer Malay Aroim. You can buy the book also. It's a Kabbalah book. One of the pupils of the Arizal, that Behema is Rosh Tevis, I think he is, right? The Tevis, yeah. Behema, is that so? I think that he's the pupil of the Baal Shem Tov. Anyway, that the letters Behema are the first letters. One minute. The fact is, I have this book. Here it is. Excuse me. 1 second. Oh, yeah. I haven't opened these books. such a long time. If I don't open it now, it's going to stay for another 10 years. Here it is. Malaya Roim. Here it is. Yes. No. Yeah, Malaya Roim. This is the Klan of the Shaz. Also, book of Kilas Yaakov. I also have. Okay. This is written by none other than who? Yaakov Neil Lagov. Is that right? Based in. No. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I'll have to look this up. It doesn't have his name. Wow. That's why the Rebbe doesn't bring his name. Because it doesn't have his name. Okay, I have to look at this. Okay. This, he says, he brings over there in this book, Kilas Yaakov, which is a Kabbalah book. He says that Behema is, I don't think it's a pupil of the Baal Shem Tov, I'm sorry, of the Arizal, I'm sorry. It says Basar Ayored, Behema is Basar Hayored Mina Shamayim, flesh that comes from heaven. Behema. How do you look at the world? You look at the world as it's the world and separate from God, or do you look at the world like it's a big miracle from God? Everything is being created by God, big miracle. So he says even behema, animals, that's what's called meat that comes down from heaven, was done, which then is a vadai, a Torah. If you look at everything that meat comes down, and it's coming from heaven, the hoof, how you're connected to the world is split. You let heaven come through down to the ground. Ein davar tameh yored min shamayim, because something impure does not come from heaven. A little bit more. Another detail in what's called a split hoof. A split hoof means that it says shpalta and it has to be divided into two, right and left side. Right and left side. What do you got over here? Right, Yaakov, Tzvi, Yalish, Avdina. Very good. Okay, good. Good, all right. Yaakov. Maybe it could be that he was a pupil of the Baal Shem Tov. I don't remember, because there's also a siddur that he also wrote. All right. No, yeah. Nor a prat in the, it has to be in two sides. As their hiluch on a oritz, when a person goes on the ground, when you're dealing with physical things, it has to be two-sided, right and left. The right means that you embrace, draw closer, and left means that you reject. You have to know that there's some things you must reject and you must embrace. There are some people which, now the Rebbe is going to talk about how to influence Jews to be more religious. There are some people that think that you want to influence Jews, which is a very good thing, to become more Jewish, that you have to do it only with the right arm. An kaim shum upholding. You don't reject anything. V'tainet, like they say, they say, if you want to bring a Jew closer to Judaism, then you have to allow everything. Be nice. Is kedai to farboigen inyanim from Torah. Sometimes you have to sort of forget about things about Torah, and even maybe redoing the Torah a little bit, according to the spirit of the time, right? Maybe you can use a microphone on Shabbos because you have a congregation of, who's going to want to come and hear you speak if you don't have a microphone? You don't have a microphone. So you use a microphone on Shabbos. It's forbidden. And etc. and etc. Their inyan as mendarv makarav zayin aliyat. The fact is, you have to try to influence every Jew and bring them to Torah. Is taka emes. This is true. Vi men showing, like we spoke many times. Is the Pirish of Mishnah, like it says, O eves abrios and makarvim the Torah, that you have to love even the creations, the Jews, that the only good thing you can say about them is that God created them. Then you have to draw them also close to the Torah. Darv men oich mekarav to the Torah. But does was a person says that in order to do this, accomplish this, so you can't do it if you keep adhere to the Torah. You have to make a little bit fixings up in the Torah. Was the Zaina does kill kulim, which really the fact is that you're destroying more than you're accomplishing, than you're building. You're really wrecking the Torah, so to speak. You're watering the Torah down. Thus is hipach. This is the opposite of the Torah. Unvi der lashon, like in the Torah, like in the Mishnah says, mekarvim the Torah. You have to be like the pupils of Aaron and bring the Torah, bring the people close to the Torah. So bring in the Torah, you have to bring Jews close to the Torah, but not to bring the Torah close to them. In other words, to adapt to the Torah to what they are. Let's say, for instance, a Jew, right? So you tell a Jew you have to put on tefillin. You're supposed to put on tefillin every weekday. The Jew says, I can't. You say to him, listen, put out whatever you can do. Whatever you should know that you're supposed to put on tefillin every day. But if you put on tefillin once in your lifetime, it's also a very amazing, wonderful thing. It should make you tremendously happy, but it should not make you satisfied. Don't think that that's your obligation. Your obligation. What you do, you put on tefillin once in your life, that's wonderful. You're going to go to heaven. You'll get all the rewards. You did it, right? You put on tefillin one time, that's great. But don't think that that's, you've finished your obligation. Finish your obligation to God. You have to put on tefillin every day. And when you put on tefillin every day, they have to be kosher. Right? Person, maybe you're worried about the person. Oh, he's already putting on every day. I can't heap too much on him. You say, listen, if your tefillin are not kosher, don't put them on. Don't put them on. Right, a mezuzah in the door. It's good, I got a mezuzah. It's not kosher. The law is, don't put, it's better no mezuzah than a not kosher mezuzah. I bet you say to a person, come on, I can't be all so strict with all these laws. I got to be, lenient a little bit. So he says, no, you have to tell what the truth is, and then they can decide how they can approach you have to help them. You can't heap everything on the person at one time. But on the other hand, you cannot water the Torah down. Don't try to say that this is all you have to do according to the Torah. It's permissible for men and women to sit together, women to sing together. If you do it, you're going to have a bigger congregation. You have more people. You're watering down the Torah. You're not. That's the thing that you're making a big mistake to. That's what the Rebbe says. You have a split hoof. They're right and left. Right is great. You embrace, to be lenient, to be loving, but you also have to have limitations. And that's what we're going to talk about. Today is Thursday. God willing, tomorrow we'll finish the Sikha at 8:15 tomorrow morning. Have a good day with Moshiach. Now 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock. Oh, the Chosam will live. Very good. Okay. We are going to 3 o'clock. We will learn today the Haftorah. This parsha, this week's Shabbos is Parshat Para. Para. When we read a special section after the reading of the Torah, we read a special section about the red cow that, if processed properly, burned in the ashes, could do away with the impurity of death, and also a beautiful Haftorah from Ezekiel. All yours at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Tune in and be happy. See you. Have a good day with Moshiach now.